Welcome to Behind the Play, a video and podcast product of The Hoop Show that explores the lives of Geelong players past and present, as well as the off-field figures that are keeping us Geelong strong. And sometimes we get some people from the other side of the fence to come aboard and share their perspective on all things footy. And that's exactly what we're doing today. We've got Caden MacDonald. Welcome aboard, mate.
Paul, thanks for having me, mate. I've grown up in Geelong, so hopefully that counts for some criteria.
Look,
plenty of Auskick clinics on Simmons Stadium and whatnot.
You're not supporting the local team, so we'll have to give the curve a little bit in that respect. But no, thanks a lot for coming aboard, mate, and stopping by for a chat.
Yeah, I appreciate you getting me on. Big clash coming up this week, so super excited to sort of rip it apart and chat about it.
Oh, look, we may as well jump into it. You guys have just been teasing everyone with the dodgy form in the last few weeks and, boxing on amongst teammates and all those sorts of things. You're just trying to lull everyone to a false sense, drop a few games, everyone thinks they got a chance, then bang, you just completely take the piss out of Brisbane.
I wish I had that Geelong supporter sort of that feeling where you can back your side in. I thought we fell off a cliff. I thought we were going to struggle to make the 8. I'd phoned it in. I couldn't see the defensive grid. I was really, really concerned. But no, it was really important to bounce back against the Lions, especially considering they were first. We knocked off top spot. So it was a good time to get back into form, and we've got a pretty tough run home. So hopefully the boys can sort of stick it out and fire their best shot in September.
Yeah, I guess for the Dees' sake, hopefully what they've kind of rediscovered last week is something that kind of carries through. I think it's an interesting one. If you hear kind of the commentary, and I don't know what your thoughts are as an actual Dees fan, I felt just kind of watching the game, for as good as the Dees were, the Lions were equally bad. So, does it make one team look especially good and especially bad as a result? You can't argue the Dees played an incredible footy that night, but Brisbane certainly did their bit to make them look pretty decent. Yeah,
it was one of those ones, so I reckon if you saw a lot of their mistakes, it came down to the Dees doing what they do best in terms of that suffocation and locking it in the forward half. But when Brisbane had it on their own terms for the first quarter and a bit, I was really concerned. And it happened this time last year when we played them. They start so hot, their hands, leading up to the footy, where you're sort of expected to go through the hands of a Lincoln McCarthy leading up and whatnot. He clunks them and they're in the jukes, and I was watching going, oh, geez, we could be in a little bit of strife here, but we worked our way back into it, and they probably were a little bit off, but geez, a 10-goal gap on a team that was first and is now second, I think is pretty crazy.
Yeah, I guess it stinks of, as a Geelong fan, it stinks of a prelim final last year, and it stinks of the grand final last year. It's a pretty ominous sort of thing for the rest of the comp to see the Dees do that to anyone in kind of the top 4, top 8 sort of ballpark, really.
Yeah, and I can't believe, for years and years I was rocking out watching this side get nowhere near anyone in the top 14. So to be sort of putting away teams in the top 8, it's really exciting, but I still am aware that there's a long way to go in this season, and it's such a tight competition that who knows when we'll end up. But if we keep putting together performances like that, I have a little bit of confidence.
You're right. These things can change fairly quickly. I guess even putting the Geelong hat on for a second, I sit back and I go, obviously I kind of knew what was coming Tom Stewart's way after the first quarter, but kind of leading up to that, we'd won 4 in a row. We're taking on the Tigers and put him to the sword pretty early. And I go, geez, all right, I'm feeling pretty good about things. But now, especially the D's are back up and about, but I reckon we can maybe take him, that sort of thing. And then Tom Stewart does that, and you go, oh shit. Great timing. Thanks, mate.
It was an unfortunate incident. It's one of those ones where it's a split-second thing, and it probably looks worse than what it actually
when you slow
was.
It down,
but I thought he'd cop 3 or 4. But it's funny. Immediately there's he's gonna get 6, 7, and it's no, he's not. He'll get his 2 or 3, and he'll be back. He's a good man, Tommy.
They've got a grid that they follow. If you follow the rubric, then it says 3-4 weeks, and it should have been pretty simple. But of course, everyone wanted to stomp their feet and toss him off the field and all that sort of stuff. And I guess that's
especially the Tiger supporters.
Oh yeah. No, lots of them. So I guess another piece of news before we really jump into you and what you've been up to. Again, as a D supporter, pretty big deal come out of the club today with Clary signing on until 2030. What do you make of that?
Yeah, that was really surprising. We've all been sort of nervously waiting for the Luke Jackson and Angus Brayshaw news, and then Clayton Oliver just pops up and says he's signing till 2030. So
better take his cash before some of the others try and scoop some of it up.
Yeah, well, that makes me nervous for what's sort of left in the piggy bank. But I always reference...
Petrarch is on a similar sort of
and Gawn.
Pay packet and timeline, sort of right?
Locked away till about then-ish as well. So, well, they're the three you probably have to sign. Stephen May's probably a little bit older than them. So
yeah, he'd be short-term contracts these days.
Yeah. So, well, in regards to Clayton Oliver, like I sort of reference Geelong when I talk about, growing up in the town, and all my mates got to go to the footy every weekend and see like club champions, like from Bartel to Ablett to Selwood to Hawkins. Like they were rocking up every week and watching club champions. And every sort of great of the Melbourne Football Club retired when I was a little bit younger in terms of like, especially more recent, in terms of like your Russell Robinsons and David Neitz and Adam Uze. That was sort of the last crop of like club champions.
Yeah, the ones that took you guys to kind of the 2000 grand final.
Yeah, for sure. And now, there was probably a 15-year gap, but now Clayton Oliver in particular, I feel like it's just an absolute privilege because I'm watching one of the best Demon players ever. Yeah. And he's already sort of like one of the best Ds to ever play. And I just feel another 7 years of that is an absolute privilege. And I'm now starting to taste what I was envious of a lot of the Geelong supporters growing up in watching like genuine greats of your footy club run around every weekend, which is cool.
No, that's fair and really well said. And I guess, we've kind of both experienced similar sort of stories in the sense that we both, for the longest time, we were born and both our clubs had been amidst fairly lengthy droughts by the time that we kind of first started to learn about the game. And I mean, were you always a D supporter from moment one, or was there the usual sort of childish bouncing around and picking a team?
No, there was no bouncing around. I probably should have shopped around a little bit, looked at the stats and sort of gone, this team isn't travelling too well. No, I was Melbourne from word go. So mum is a Geelong supporter, always has, the ABC, could have been champions. She doesn't watch every game, but she listens on the radio. She finds it a little bit easier for her. And dad's just a big D supporter. So I went Melbourne early and I was kicking myself, going, what have I done? Mum's set up for success. She's seen 3 flags in 5 years and I'm seeing the worst football club in a 10-year patch ever. But, I feel like now I'm pretty happy with the decision. But it wasn't really just a decision in the end. It was, sort of just forced
strong-armed. Yeah, strong-armed by your dad. Yeah, it sounds exactly like me with the Cats back in the day. There was no entertaining another team. Dad would never have stood for it.
Absolutely.
Mum was Carlton, but there was never. I mean, she never really cared that much about the game, so it kind of meant that with Dad and his absolute love of the game, I was always going to be pushed straight down that path.
So, well, in that scenario, you have picked right.
I absolutely picked right. But again, didn't seem like that. I guess one of my first footy memories, because I was born '89, one of my first footy memories really was the '95 grand final, and that's where we got smacked by Carlton. And Mum actually caring about footy for a day. So I don't know. It's weird how this sort of. Oh yeah, and she's 100% back on it now. Just as they finally get a sniff for the first time in 25 years. But I guess we can kind of jump into things from here. For anyone who's not aware of you, and I doubt there's many in this footy space because it's just a lazy 70,000 subs and all those sorts of things you got on YouTube. But I guess if we're trying a little short description for you and what you get up to in this footy space, what do you got to say?
I'm just a footy nuffy that makes AFL content, to be completely honest. I've sort of got a finger in every pie. Like I do a little bit of AFL Evolution, so a little bit of gaming. I wouldn't necessarily call myself a gamer. I fired up a couple of podcasts, but I got one at the minute called Goes Alright. Yeah, on Spotify, so I do a little bit of podcasting. I like to live stream my reactions to Dees games and sometimes neutral games, so a bit of live streaming, but also I like to sort of go out, kick the footy, do goal kicking challenges, and also make parody songs as well. So I'm sort of a bit of a jack of all trade, master of none. But it's super fun. Like on my channel, you're not really sure what you're going to get next, and
it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, it's good. It makes me feel like I don't get stuck anywhere necessarily, but I also, like, if I honed in on one of those things, maybe I could have made a better fist of it. But
I don't know, again, 70k subs, and I think it's like 18 plus million views across all your stuff now. Like, that kind of suggests otherwise. Sounds like that kind of constant palette change for you, but also the viewer is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah, well, for sure. Like, I guess my favourite YouTubers growing up were people like your KSIs and Joe Wellers and Logan Pauls and people overseas. Very UK influenced my channel for sure. And they were doing from FIFA to like forfeit challenges to quizzes to crossbar challenges. And I guess that's where I've got a lot of inspiration from. And for me as a consumer, I like someone who mixes up their content and grows it. And doesn't get stuck sort of doing the same thing that worked a long time ago. So that's definitely been a goal to keep it keep it new, keep it fresh.
Yeah, no, some of that stuff is fantastic. And obviously you mentioned the goal kicking challenge just a moment ago, and you had one of those fairly recently. You didn't have a great performance personally, but certainly made for great content though.
Yeah, it wasn't great. I pride myself on the goal kicking challenges as well. There's been a few where my form's been a lot better than what it was in recent times, but it's one of those ones where I don't really kick the footy unless it's on camera, and it sort of goes like 3 or 4 or 5 months between actually having a kick. And I was lining up in front of all the lads watching, and it just felt foreign. Like the technique felt foreign, the ball in my hand felt foreign, and it wasn't my day. But before I do another one, I'm going to go out and sort of get a bit of practice in.
Look, it's a shame because you didn't have the worst technique of everyone kicking there, and yet, you obviously had the worst results a lot. So
it was like good form until the ball dropped.
Until the ball actually hit the boot. So that's all right. It's a bit of a shame these things happen. But I guess and you've got a little bit of history. You obviously mentioned a lot of influences that you had from the YouTube space. But how did you actually realise or determine that I've got this love of footy, I can bring it across this YouTube side and actually kind of make something of it?
It was sort of a bit accidental. So I was trying to get into radio. I wanted to be the next Hamish and Andy. I went to radio school, which doesn't sound like it's a thing, but it's a thing.
It's still a thing, yeah.
Looks like Hogwarts, and it's you got to get there on a train. It was a magical time because I was a bit lost after year 12 because I was like, well, I want to get into media, but there's there is a vague media course, but there's nothing really to get me in.
And it's not really that new media stuff that potentially you had your eyes on again with all those influences, yeah.
For sure, and you sort of got to just find your own way. Like I think everyone who's in media would have a billion different stories of how they got there. Yeah. So essentially, I just started going down to community radio in Geelong, and then I went to radio school. And then after radio school, I just had this big wave of confidence. I was 20, 21, and I was like, oh, sweet, I'm going to be the next Hamish and Andy. Like, that was easy. I did my 6-month radio course. When's the Fox contract? I was a little bit naive to the fact that you need a lot more experience than that. So I was a little bit disgruntled and upset. And then I was having a bit of a sook to my radio lecturer who said, listen, mate, you can do anything. Like, it's 2016. You can make your own podcast or make your own YouTube channel. And from there, I started making content that was a little bit weird, a little bit quirky. But the stuff that started to slowly snowball was the footy stuff. And since then, I've sort of doubled down on the footy content and tripled down on it, to be honest. And I've been really happy in the last couple of years with where I'm at, because obviously footy's a massive passion of mine, and to sort of do it every day from my own room, just making footy content, it's the dream, to be honest.
Pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
What was some of the other stuff that you were doing that was outside of footy in those early stages? I guess as you were kind of dabbling in other areas to see what stuck.
So it was just like skits. So I'd get mates involved, and we'd do like little skits and sketches. But I suppose if someone wanted to do a skit now, they'd get TikTok up on their brand new iPhone, and even if the content isn't great or it's a little bit clunky, it at least looks good. Yeah, I was doing it off this like old laptop, and the only camera I had was a webcam. So even though the content was, there was slight bits of humor in there, it just looked horrendous and sounded horrendous. So those skits are absolutely privated on my YouTube channel, and hopefully no one has ever
never to be seen or discussed again.
Yeah, exactly right.
And so did you have this penny dropping moment? Obviously you realised that kind of the footy content was getting a bit more traction than the other aspects, but was there a penny dropping moment for you where you realize, holy shit, like I'm actually, like, something is starting to work here, and this is something I can really build a platform out of?
Yeah, it was probably 6 or 7 months in, of like not getting views where I made a AFL parody song, and once again filmed on a webcam, recorded in like this terrible app on my iPhone 4. There was like this karaoke app, like recorded it in one take sort of thing. There was no sort of mixing or mastering, and I put that out, and that started to gather legs on Instagram. So I started getting like followers on Instagram, and it was all like little kids with I love football in their bio, and I had 400 followers, and I'm like, what is going on here? And what I'd found out that like there was pages taking the song and sharing it, and I was looking at some of the pages, and my video had like 15,000 views on Insta, and I was like, oh, 15,000 people have gotten around, one of my songs. And from there, I started to really double down on the songs, and I reckon I released like 5 or 6 in, a 2-month patch, and then I guess after they started to take off on Insta and Facebook and whatnot, and a little bit on my channels, that's when that first sort of like, oh, I don't want to be the parody guy moment sunk in.
Yeah, right.
And that's when I tried to diversify the content, and that was like year 1. So I started to do like vlogs from there, and then goal kicking challenges from there, and been doing that ever since.
And it's continued to just broaden and broaden to the point where you get all sorts of guests from on the field, off the field, and other content creators as well. Obviously, even now, you and I just chatting about this stuff that kind of comes from building this really awesome platform that you've got over the years.
Yeah, for sure. I'm like, I just love chatting footy, and I love chatting footy with anyone, to be honest. So I think that's what I really enjoy about the content, is getting to meet like-minded and great people. Like, there's been times where I'll go to the G by myself, and this is like way back, and I used to enjoy that, but now I can sort of hit a couple of people up that I know make demon content, and I go up and watch the game with them, and it's so much better than trying to crowbar or just drag someone up, one of my mates from Geelong who, I don't want to go to another Dees game. They've won even 2 just games like for the season.
I don't know about you, but the couple of times you find yourself at a game on your own, you find yourself really awkwardly talking to people around you that may or may not want a bar of that conversation whatsoever. It's an odd one.
Well, back in the day, I used to love doing it, because I'd be that old guy with Triple M in my ear, just up in the bleachers by myself. But now I find it a little bit uncomfortable, because I'm the weird guy talking to a camera by myself, and everyone's like,
true. That's a different.
Is that guy all by himself talking to a camera? And it's like, no. Well, yes, but no.
But don't think anything of it. It's all right. It's the content.
It's my job. I swear.
Yeah, and I guess like you've just described it as a job there. Like, how's that feel to be able to kind of call what you're doing a job? It's something that very few people are able to do, especially because I guess if you compare the scale of AFL versus most other sports in the world, like the audience, the capture size there is obviously much smaller, and yet you've been able to make it a full-time gig. Like, how's that feel?
Yeah, I should have picked APL or NBA. The ceiling is a lot higher in those sports, but it's amazing. Like, it's crazy, it's ridiculous, it's stressful at times, like middle of summer, and
coming up with content,
but the pennies start to sort of dwindle away, and I'm just waiting for March to rock up so I can sort of replenish the bank account. Is always quite stressful, but no, it's amazing. It's so much fun, and I definitely don't take it for granted at all. It's an absolute blast.
And I guess during those quiet months, how do you try and ignoring the kind of financial component to it, which of course there is, but like there's obviously not as much going on there. It is a very deliberate dry spot, and it's not like a lot of those other sports around the world where there's, again, like if we talk soccer, for example, there's seasons going on in different parts of the world in different sort of time zones, and different parts of the year. So there's always an opportunity to be able to come, okay, now we'll shift our attention to the A-League versus now we'll look at the EPL versus this and this and this. There's always something kind of going on there, whereas we have a fairly lengthy dry spot where a whole other sport completely takes center stage in cricket. Like, how do you try, like what sort of things are you looking at doing during those periods to try and keep that audience engaged?
Yeah, it's tough, because sometimes there's been years where I fight it, and I'm like, I'm going to put out double the videos and try and make up for the less amount of views, and it just ends up killing me, and I burn myself out, and it's almost every year by about December I am just completely burnt out. So I'm really interested to see how I do it this year, because I love cricket, but I don't love it as much as footy. So I can talk about footy for ages, and I feel like I'm definitely coming from a fan's point of view. I'm certainly no expert. I gave the sport away in under 18, so I definitely can't sit there and sort of give great analysis, but I can from like a passionate supporter point of view.
From a supporter's perspective.
But cricket, it's like I love it, but it's not as big as a love and passion as AFL, and I don't really like talking about cricket the way I like talking about footy. But yeah, I've got a couple of ideas that I think could probably tie me over for the summer. I definitely think I've got to put an end to the big blackout. Like, there's been years where I'll disappear in November and come back in February. And then to start the momentum again is very, very challenging. It's like the wheels have been rusted on.
Well, and you're working against algorithms and all those sorts of things at that point.
Exactly, which says, you haven't been uploading in the last little bit. I go, yeah, but why would I?
You kind of get buried.
But they don't understand.
YouTube doesn't care about that,
yeah. So, I think this year, if I could just keep the fire alive a little bit over the summer.
That little drip feed.
It might work out a little bit better. But I'll probably put 3 videos out, they'll flop, and I'll phone it in.
And just embrace the cricket at that point. Now, obviously, as we've touched on plenty of times, you do have, like, you are a Melbourne supporter, but you do try and have a broader kind of assortment of footy stuff. You do try and explore what's going on with the other clubs and those sorts of things as well. But how hard is it to not just go full Melbourne, especially now?
Yeah, well, it's quite funny. So my co-host and I, one of my best mates, Connor Rogers, we did a podcast last year before Goes Alright this year. And last year, every week, like from the top, we're talking about Melbourne because they had won 9 in a row, and then they were first, and then they dropped a couple, then they won the qualifier, and it was quite funny because I'm like, we were the most irrelevant side like a year and a half ago, and now we're sort of top of the top of the agenda on AFL 360 and whatnot, which was exciting. There's a fine line when I'm doing like my footy podcast, but I think even if you aren't a Melbourne supporter, like I think it's important that I do talk about a variety of things, but I think people do still tune in to sort of hear what I have to say about the Dees. So as much as I am conscious of the fact that I do have to keep a bit of variety, I also feel like I can get away with chatting about the Dees a little bit more than
it's still part of the brand.
People. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Especially with my Dees posters behind me and Dees bobbleheads. It's hard to ignore.
You can't pretend that doesn't exist. So you just lean into it. Exactly right.
Yeah.
Now, I guess switching off from the content side of it and kind of zeroing back in on the premiership last year, obviously there was plenty of content you're making around all of that, but just as a supporter, what was that like for you? Because again, like you touched on the fact that you had a bunch of mates. I was in that sort of boat where 2007 and then obviously 9 and 11 were these incredible years after this ridiculous drought. Now, the Dees could be at the beginning. They've at least got one premiership, but they could potentially be at the beginning of doing something similar.
Yeah.
What does that set off within you when you see such a demolition go on through the finals last year, and obviously start so hot this year? Again, we'll ignore that dry patch that we had recently because look what they did to the Lions. They're probably back and you'll smack us this week and think nothing of it. I'm trying to like get that narrative that you're going to smack us now and lull you into a false sense and then we'll beat you by 50 points. But yeah, I mean, what was that? Yeah, what was that like for you as you kind of taking all of that in again, more as a consumer and fan of the Dees as opposed to on the content side? When the camera goes off, because obviously you did some live reaction stuff to it.
Yeah.
But when the camera goes off, what goes through the head?
Well, the camera went off. I went onto a live stream. I'm just all for the people. No, it's fan first, by the way. So like it's fan first, content second. So like one game, for example, that I vlogged was this was like a few years ago, was Zach Tui kicking the goal after the siren.
Yeah.
And that was 100% like fan first. Like in terms of, I need Zach Tui to miss this. I need to see the Dees win against Geelong. I'm front row. I come to this ground every year and we get rolled.
Don't do it to me.
And then once Zach Tui kicks the goal, and it's about 15 minutes later where the sort of blood races out of my head and my heart, I go, oh, cool, that's a good bit of content. Like, people like seeing me suffer, and I've just witnessed a goal after the siren. And that's sort of like last year, like
with Maxi winning it against us.
Oh yeah, that was ridiculous. That was content and fan.
Yeah, you got a bit of both.
Yeah, but yeah, in regards to doing the grand final, like I set the camera up because I was doing some stuff with the AFL, doing the Demon Fan Diaries. the AFL wanted me to vlog like my week and reaction from like round 18 onwards, and that was an amazing thing to sort of document, was like my thoughts and views for 8 weeks, which seemed to run into the Dees winning the flag. But yeah, so yeah, they did. They rigged it. Some of the comments were like, "They've rigged this for Kados, and the AFL knew. Why'd they start this?" And I was like, "Come on, guys.
Look, you're doing pretty well for yourself, but it's a whole other level to rig it for." Yeah.
So to answer the question, I guess like once the camera went off and whatnot, and it did sort of digest, it was like, I couldn't believe what I had witnessed. I couldn't believe that. Like, here's just like a bit of a weird thought. It's like that Simon Goodwin was like a premiership coach, because like 1 second, sort of 12 months earlier,
him out the door.
Yeah, he's on the absolute ropes, and now I'm sort of viewing him as like a Nathan Buckley, and I'm like, oh, but Bucks didn't win one. Oh, well, he's like a Ross Lyon. No, Ross didn't win one. Oh. So then I'm starting to, and I'm putting him in this category of like coach that 12 months ago I couldn't even fathom that he was in. So things like that start to happen. And just knowing the age demographic and how young they were as well, I did start to look forward going, geez, maybe this is our 07 and whatever happens from here happens. But it still sort of is hard to digest. Like even this year when the commentators say, oh, you know, I'll be watching a neutral game and they'll say, geez, Brisbane are in form. Maybe they can take it up to the reigning premiers, Melbourne. And I go, what did he say?
Oh, yeah, reigning premiers. Right, that's
like,
us. Shit.
Yeah. Like, what? And why is Brisbane trying to compete with us? Like, who are we? Oh, wait, no, we are good.
Yeah, we're the top dog at the moment.
Yeah, it's still, like, even now, it's still taking some digesting. But it was an amazing experience. And, hopefully, if I'm can be too greedy, hopefully we can get a couple more in the flesh. Just one more in the flesh would be, the icing on the cake.
Yeah, I guess that's a whole other component of it, is obviously the nature of what happened last year. So to be able to go there and see it face to face would be the dream, I'd imagine.
Were you there for the Geelong ones?
Yeah, I was there for 07 and 11, and work dogged me and screwed me over in 09.
Oh no, jeez, that's heartbreaking.
Wasn't too happy about that one. It was definitely the best grand final of the lot, but anyway, as a spectacle, it was the best grand final.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, well, geez, the toe poke and whatnot. The age demographic is what excites me. It's like the core of our group was like Trent Rivers, Bowie, Luke Jackson, Pickett, James Jordan, Tom Sparrow, and these guys are like 21 or 20. So, and then there's like a bit of a gap, and then the next bracket of the group is like 24 to 26. So,
which is exactly where you want them to be. Like your
it's
senior
crazy.
end being that young is
it's crazy.
Pretty good.
So I am aware that there's a bit of a sort of opportunity here for the club, and when we were 10-0, I was going, great, this is going to script. We're in it, we're going to have another crack at it. But then all of a sudden you sort of blink and you lose 3 in a row and you go, oh, Jesus, well, I don't know where we're going to end up. I don't know what's going to happen. So it sort of humbled me again to go, geez, 1 week at a time, and we'll just see whatever happens.
See what happens.
And but geez, I've been so thankful to see the footy that I've witnessed, and hopefully it can continue.
I mean, I guess as someone watching who's not a Dees supporter, I was looking at the Dees early form in the season. I go, look, they're just getting over the line. They're not doing anything overly convincing. Of course, every now and then you play a North Melbourne or something, you pump them by a ridiculous amount, because sadly that's kind of where that club's at the moment. But
I've been there.
yeah, exactly. You've obviously endured a bit of that at Geelong's hands too over the journey. You weren't there for that horror game, were you?
I stayed the whole game. I stayed all 4 quarters.
I'm impressed by that. Like, I wouldn't have blamed you for disappearing it halfway through the second quarter.
Yeah, I went with mates. I had a little Nokia flip-top phone, and I took a photo of the score, and I said, I'm going to keep this for when we're good. And I don't have the phone anymore, but I literally took a photo of my little Nokia of, like, the
very nice
score.
Yeah, I guess as I look at the Dees now, they've just kind of, I felt like they'd coasted through, so I wasn't totally surprised when they I didn't expect 3, to be clear, but like when the things started falling off, like, okay, maybe clubs are starting to work them out a little bit. And again, obviously we see what has most recently happened, and that messaging is, or that kind of public perception is completely flipped again. But it does show, like, no matter the demographic, no matter how successful you've been, no matter how dominant you might have appeared to be, like it doesn't take a lot for things to go slightly off the rails a little bit. And at that point, obviously people want to talk about, Gawn's injury, Stephen May, those sort of things. But at that point, the first loss, and neither of those things had happened at that point.
Yeah, for sure.
But it seems like the combination of those 3 losses, maybe the off-field stuff as well, maybe even Gawny's injury, and then a bye has been this perfect opportunity for Goody or just even the leadership, like the team's leadership, the on-field leadership, to go, all right, let's straighten up now. We've got ourselves in this beautiful position. 10-3, still fantastic. Now let's make our charge. Like, let's steam home and do it again. It's a great position to be coming in the finals from.
Yeah, well, I think we got a pretty rough run home, which is exciting because I think you want to be sort of rock hard fit and sort of not even fitness, but go into games going, geez, we've knocked all these guys off if we can.
We can do it again.
So give yourself a little bit of recency bias for sure. So earlier in the season we were just coasting and we didn't get out of second or third gear. We'd win one quarter for the game and we'd win the game
by a mile. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd see the press conferences, and this is why I love Simon Goodwin so much, but the reporters would sort of ask, like, oh, so Simon, did you guys take it easy? And he'd go, AFL football is hard to win. Like, AFL games are hard to win, and if you don't respect your opponent and if you don't turn up, you're going to get done. And we're going okay at the minute by accepting the fact that, when you play North Melbourne for 2.5, 3 quarters, you're getting a team that takes it up to you.
Yeah. They just run out of legs.
100%. So if you're off your game, these teams can pip you. So I was sort of conscious of the fact that you just got to respect the competition and respect the opponent. But the other thing that was sort of annoying me going into before the 3 losses was everyone kept referencing the grand final. Like, oh, this is fine. Well, they were doing this last year. They'll do it in the finals again. And I was growing sort of impatient with that because I was like, I haven't seen us do that dominance and that free-flowing, easy football all season. So I don't think we can just sort of pretend that it could just rock up in finals. And then we lost 3 in a row, and I was going, geez, I don't think we've been travelling that well. And I haven't seen the 2021 Melbourne. And, and it started to sort of grow and grow. But then after that Brisbane game, there was a bit of a hint of like, oh, we do have it in our kit bag, and our best is still pretty good. So, bit of a relief, that result, given the sort of build-up.
As you look around through the comp at the moment, and obviously having just pipped the team that was previously sitting on top of the ladder, who is the team as a Melbourne supporter that you're most keeping your eye on? You go, oh shit, like they're the ones that, like, I'd like to think, and sorry, me projecting for you here, like I'd like to think we'd win no matter who the opposition is, but if we're against this one, or like we need to be right on top of our game, who's the club?
Well, for me, every year it genuinely is Geelong.
Right.
And I look in the first 6 rounds every season, and I go, the Cats have fallen off. And then by round 15, it's like the Cats are second or third.
The top 4 again, yeah.
It's like what the hell was happening? Like what is happening?
They're too old. They're too this. They're too that. And
100%. And I jump on and I try and probably talk it into existence, so it makes it a little bit easier to come down the highway again. Yeah. But look, it probably is Geelong, and I'm not just saying this because of last week, but no, I reckon the Blues are gettable. Not yet. I'm waiting for their end of year fade out where they finish 5th or 6th.
Yeah.
I would say Richmond. I would say Richmond's the other team.
Yeah. No, I'd actually back you up on that one, especially just seeing what they did to us in that second, like from the late in the second through to halfway in the fourth.
To me, both those teams are proven as well.
Yeah.
And a team that probably hasn't been proven in the last sort of 3 or 4 years that I worry about playing against is Sydney. Even when we won the grand final last year, we only beat them by a kick and a bit. And then this season, I was going into that game after losing to Freo going, the games against Sydney are always hard. And obviously they beat us by 10 points. So I would hate, if we lost if we dropped a qualifying final and then had to play Sydney week 2, I would be terrified.
Yeah, they're a team that, I don't know, when they're up and about, and again, I think it's one of those things that can absolutely happen with a really young team as well, if they're bubbly and full of energy and those sort of things. But like, they're a team that when they're on, they are white hot and near unstoppable. But if they're just, that 5% off, then you can't, like, the top 8 teams sometimes embarrass them. And again, I think that's the nature of being a young team. But I think they are that sort of a team right now. The experience is just what they need.
Like, they'll beat a Geelong, beat a Melbourne, and then I won't tune in for a couple of Sydney games because they always get like that 4:00 Saturday game, and I might be out somewhere or whatnot. And then a couple of weeks later, I find out they've lost to Gold Coast and, I don't know, like another sort of team on the up, and I go, oh, how did that happen?
Yeah, it's a weird sort of one. I guess we'll have to see what happens come finals time when, well, presumably Geelong, Richmond, Sydney are all there to vie with your boys for the flag again. We'll see what happens. But I guess as we start to wind things down a little bit, do you have any, and I guess we've kind of touched on this a little bit because the Dees have been, prior to last year, in a pretty bad place, but do you have any particularly positive memories of Cats v Dees games? Obviously, being based in Geelong, you've seen a few over the journey, but do you have any particularly fond ones that you think of?
No. Every year I would rock up and just have the hope just torn out of my heart. And I used to get so excited because, I'm a Geelong-based Melbourne supporter, so I can't really explain it, but it was like your favourite band coming to town. It's like, oh, David Neitz is on the Footy Show and Russell Robinson's on TV and they're on the coverage.
And now they've come across.
They're these people that are just like, I don't expect to ever see them in the flesh. And now I'm at the APCO before the game and one of them's in their suits just about to get ready to go to the game or whatnot. Like they were walking around Caden Park and they're there. I can see them and they're in my town. So like, I used to think, David Neitz has driven past the Geelong Arena. Like David Neitz has driven past Caden Cafe. Like he's in my town. It used to blow me away. And then I would go to the game, be super excited because it was 15 minutes from my house. Like, what a privilege Geelong-based Geelong supporters get to watch an AFL team and you're 10 minutes from home. Oh, it's amazing. But then, I would literally if it wasn't 180 points, it was 80 points. Like, it was just horrible playing the Cats down here. I guess one of my favourite memories was I came to a game in 2005 and the Dees got up. I don't know. That might have been the Russell Robinson 7-goal one.
Yeah,
I think he kicked 7 goals, and we beat Geelong. And then the following year in 2006, I came. Adam Uze took one of the biggest hangers I've ever seen, and it was a draw. So we had a nice little patch there where we were quite competitive down here. And then I got sick of going throughout the 2010s, so I decided not to go in 2015. And we won.
Because I feel like if I've got it right,
that was Corey Enright's 300 game.
Yeah, because I was there for that one and right behind the goals and thinking this is going to be a great day. But right behind the goals, and it was the D supporters there around me. Because they were trying to do a pretty decent job of actually giving, like, any of the opposition supporters at Simmons Stadium, Caden Park, whatever we've called it over the journey, GMHBA, usually just get shunted off to the side. They don't even get a spot behind the goals. But on this particular occasion, for whatever reason, the D supporters were right behind the goals, and we were stuck. Like our particular seats happened to be right there behind them, and that was an incredibly deflating experience because of all the things that we've discussed. Where like the Dees was kind of stuck in this rut for years and years and years. Geelong having been at this point, 2015, king of the world for the bulk of the decade, really at that particular stage. And this one kind of came out of nowhere. This was meant to be a celebration for Corey Enright and all that he's done, and all of a sudden, they've pissed it away. What is going on here?
Well, at halftime, I drove down. There was no car parks anywhere. I ran in and watched like the second quarter, like the last quarter and a bit. Yeah. And then I snuck in the rooms after the game and was just chilling with Angus Brayshaw and all the boys.
Very nice.
But I was kicking myself for not going because I always go. Like, I go every year. And I just had enough. Like, it had sort of broken me those games, and I wasn't excited. And David Neitz wasn't coming down anymore. It was sort of Jimmy Tulpas and Geordie Gisbert, so it didn't have the same sort of appeal as what it used to have. And then, like last year, I was dying to go. I was like we were in the middle of lockdown. I think that week lockdown had just happened again or something. And I was like, oh my God, I haven't seen this team play all year. I thought there was going to be like maybe 1,000 seats or something. But that wasn't the case. And I live streamed it and watched Gawny pull off probably one of the best Dees home and away wins that I had ever seen. And just my luck, I was watching it from home when my superheroes are 10 minutes down the road.
that close, and you couldn't actually do it this time. It's, I guess, a bit jarring like that, but I guess that opportunity is coming. We're awfully close now. Actually, I've just lost track. It's in Geelong this week, isn't it? Yeah. So
Well, I'm strangely like, it is such a foreign feeling to be excited to go, and I 100% know that if the Dees get up, it's going to be like by a kick or a kick and a bit. Like Geelong are either going to win by 30 or the Dees are going to win by 10. That's my sort of feel for the game, because it's just so hard to win down here. Despite if you're first on the ladder and just won the flag, I'm still terrified. But for the first time ever in my existence, I'm like excited to go because I hopefully, touch wood, that we're not going to embarrass ourselves. Like I used to get so embarrassed that my team would come down and put the performances up in front of people that know that I go for Mel, your classmates and workmates who are rocking up going, oh, this is Dosso's team. And then we just embarrass ourselves. I feel confident that hopefully that won't happen. And
might finally have a chance to get one back.
Hopefully it's a good game. Yeah, jeez. I don't know.
Decades of torment that you might potentially get to throw in all their faces again.
It would be a weird
Personally, I'm hoping that's not the case for you. Sorry,
it'd be a weird feeling walking out of that ground happy.
What is this? I don't know what to do.
Just walking to K-Caf with a bit of a pep in my step. Just get a pizza and a chips and gravy.
Now, we've touched on so many names at the club in recent years that have brought obviously so much joy for you in the last 12 months specifically. But who is your current favourite player?
Clayton Oliver. When he debuted, I was like, oh my God, this bloke's like decent. And
came out the blocks hot, didn't he?
He did. And in his second year, he should have been All-Australian. He averaged like 28, 29 disposals, but it was one of those like, we're not going to give it to the second year. It was just, I suppose the midfield's hard to crack into anyway. And since then, he's just done that since. So now he's sort of averaging 34. And it is a little bit more impressive because he sort of breaks from contest with his legs, and he's
developed a bit more of an outside game to complement what he already had.
100%. Yeah. But it's still sort of what he's been doing since year 2, just racking it up and putting his head over it. And I think he's one of my favourites because, once again, as I said, like I'm watching one of the best Dees players ever, and I guess Gawny's in that bracket, and I reckon Petrarca's in that bracket as well. So, as I jokingly said, I've gone from watching James Magner, Viv Mitchie, Geordie Gisbert, who I loved at the time, but then you compare
it's a different level of class
to the caliber now. It's such a privilege.
And I guess like built on that, and maybe it's the same answer. Who's your favourite demon of all time that you've had the opportunity to either watch old footage of or actually see live?
It was Russell Robinson for me. Nice. I love a forward that can mark and kick a goal. When Jeremy Howe first got drafted, he was by far my favourite player, and then he left, which all my favourite players left. Like Lyndon Dunn left, Mitch Clark left, Jimmy Toumpas left. Yeah. Like all my favourite players took off. But Russell Robinson, 200 games, 200 goals or whatever it was. Certified sort of club champion. He was my favourite for sure.
And a great entertainer as well, on field and off. So play the guitar and take hangers and just do it all. A great man. Yeah, he's absolute champion. Certainly my favourite D to watch at the time, regardless of what the scoreline was. He was always entertaining, and then obviously whether it was footy show gigs or whatever it happened to be, he was always good for a laugh. So I'm totally with you there. Who from the club is that next player? And obviously there's 22 incredible blokes that are rolling out every single week right now. But who's that one that's maybe not getting much of a game yet, or has bounced in and out so far that you reckon could be that next gun? And please, again, as someone who doesn't support the club, can you not have any more of those? But
yeah, well, geez, it depends how deep.
Yeah,
it depends how deep we go. So Jacob Van Rooyen is
yeah,
playing in the twos, and he is like a certified key forward in the making. And he's been playing VFL and he's been super consistent this year. I'm not sure whether they're going to wheel him out just yet, but he's so exciting. And then I guess people got a bit of a taste for Toby Bedford.
Yeah.
Now, he's a fascinating story where he's been on the list for about 3 or 4 years
It's a name that's been kicking around, yeah.
Yeah, and that never happened with us. If someone was on the list for 3 or 4 years and had only played a handful of games, it was just, they were just going to get delisted. And now it's like, that's when they're starting to debut and play, which I think speaks about like the development that they're getting in those 3 or 4 years now. But and
again, about the quality of the 22 that you've got every week too.
Yeah, 100%. But they're not just like peaking in the VFL and like they're sort of going on to break into the side. It's sort of like Tom Sparrow and James Jordan last year. They were on the list for 2 or 3 years before they cracked in. So the sort of system that they've got in place now is so much better than what it used to be. But I think, Toby Bedford, I reckon he should be in the team for the rest of the year. And, the way he's sort of like getting on the scoreboard and then putting on the pressure, it's super exciting.
That's what you want to see. That's awesome to hear. I guess kind of going back to more topical things.
Yes.
Luke Jackson. What's going to happen?
He's gone.
You reckon he's gone?
No, I reckon he'll stay. It's not often that players leave after one contract. They usually do.
A premiership.
Well, yeah.
Potential for multiple.
Like a Dangerfield, for example, like he was always going to come home, and that was just the consensus.
Yeah.
But he gave Adelaide at least 2 or 3 contracts. At least sort of played like 7 years. It's not often that players leave after their first rookie contract. So I'd be surprised if he doesn't chuck another 2 on at least. But no, we can't lose him because I've never seen a player do what he does. Like if he was just in the forward line, I think he'd be talked about like a Max King type. And if he was just in the ruck and there was no Gawn, I reckon he'd be sort of, I don't know what he does in
but
the
he can do both.
He can do both, just his follow up is crazy. Like I've just never seen a player like that. So to lose him would be really tough. But then I start sort of licking my lips at like what we could command with a player like that. So I think he'll sign. Surely one more.
Yeah, look, I'm with you. I don't see why he would go. And again, sure, there's this lure potentially to go home or whatever it happens to be, but there is this incredible lure of, I mean, who knows? There might be another premiership by the end of this year, for all we know. Again, touch wood for you guys.
golly.
But hypothetically, he might have another medal around his neck by the end of the year, and then at that stage, you start thinking about, okay, there could be 3, there could be 4, whatever it ends up being. Like, but I mean, we've discussed all this already. Like, they are such a young list that you can't. Like, they're going to be competitive at the very least for a long time to come. You would think, unless the wheels completely fall off, and like that's an enticing prospect for a young bloke.
Yeah,
and he's not just skating through either. Like he's fixed in that 22. Like there's no reason really to knock him out.
And then they talk about, but you got to lose one, and that worries me because Brayshaw's got to sign, and then there's talks. I don't know. I actually have no idea about all this, but I've just seen some forums and whatnot that like a James Harms type might not get the money he deserves because of. Literally, I've got no idea, but. I hope we don't lose one. Like, I don't know if I'm being greedy, but what we've got is unbelievable. And James Harms is really, really serviceable as well. So I sort of want to keep them all. And
Yeah, I don't really buy into that whole lose one sort of idea. And I think about the Tigers. They didn't lose one. I mean, Alex Rance eventually left, but like he'd
like
done
a Brandon Ellis.
Yeah, but he's not that. No offense to Brandon Ellis, but he's not that Luke Jackson sort of thing.
Yeah, true.
I mean, Buddy left for his reasons when it comes to Hawthorn, but it didn't stop them. Gary Ablett left. We won the very next year for like it. Yes, you can lose one. It doesn't sack
him. I want that second one.
yeah. Maybe he needs to go just to guarantee more flags for you. But maybe I'm coming at this from the completely wrong sort of mindset. But I mean, like I think, I don't buy into that. And even in the case of Geelong, like we'd won a couple at that point. Buddy was there for 2 before he left.
Yeah.
Again, the Tigers didn't really lose. Again, no offense to Brandon Ellis, but he's not dusty, for example. Like, Geelong and Hawthorn lost Gary Ablett and Buddy, and Brandon Ellis isn't those two. No offense, mate. So, like, I don't buy into that idea yet. And I guess for the sake of you guys as Dees supporters, I hope you don't lose him. He is an incredible talent, and maybe he'll go at some point. Maybe it will be the inevitable thing, a bit like Danger. But by that stage, you want to hope that he's given so much to the club. And again, I mean, your comparison to Danger is a fantastic one. He gave tons to the Crows. He nearly dragged him to a premiership, couldn't quite do it. And even when he left, he kind of worked the negotiations. He could have walked out. And
I think they made a grand final the year after he left.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly. So, but when he left, he made sure that a deal was struck up because he didn't want the Crows to get screwed over in the process. Which is, I mean, that's just what you want from any player who really respects and values the environment they've been a part of. So hopefully, no matter what happens with Luke Jackson, all of those same sorts of things play out, and that no one really loses in the scenario.
Yeah, 100%. Well, it's a bit of a wait and watch. I'm still confident. Like, you can't read into anything really, because like 2 months ago, all the reports were he's staying. Like, it's such a non-story. He's going to stay. He's just got to work through it. And then because there hasn't been an answer, it's like because there's been no news, people have started creating news.
The news cycle's horrible like that.
Like, I guess, like, because he hasn't signed, they can create the news, but I just don't understand how something would change in the last 8 weeks. So I'm still confident, but I don't know. It's a business in the end, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah, but no, I think you're right. And like that whole conversation about how the media handles the news is another one that could go for hours, really, because like you're right. Like, has there been an official comment? No. Then
absolutely
you're really just dragging out the same thing and spitting hypotheticals at us every single week. So it's a weird sort of thing like that. Final couple of questions, and now looking at this, kind of slipping the Geelong sort of show on here, and looking for an opponent's perspective here. Who's been your favourite cat to watch over the journey?
Oh, well, I've been envious of a lot of them and sort of disrespected by a lot of them. Like, Shannon Burns is... Oh, maybe it was James Kelly sleeping in the song after they beat the Dees once by about 18 points.
Right. That was I wasn't big on that.
I reckon Matthew Stokes was probably my favourite player growing up.
What was it about Stokesy?
I'm a massive small forward man. I love someone who can kick snags, and I reckon I saw him down at the Torquay Footy Oval once, and he signed for hat, and I just thought this bloke's an absolute legend. So, Matthew Stokes was probably one of my favourite cats growing up.
No, good pick. One that I wouldn't have necessarily expected, but he's a fantastic player. Like, I mean, I usually just think of other people from supporting other teams, and they go to Ablett, they go to Bartel, they go to Scarlett, they go to Ablett Senior, whatever it happens to be. So, it's. I totally get it. And I guess the final question there, schoolyard pick style. If you had to pick between Gary Jr. and Gary Senior, who would you pick?
Gary Jr. What he did was just crazy. And talk about envious. Like, just watching that midfield, the Bartels, Salwoods, Abletts, it was just ridiculous. And like, there was a stage sort of through high school where I'd go to watch Geelong games at Geelong as a bit of a neutral and just go with my mates. And some of the things that Gary Ablett did was just crazy. And I was probably, because I was envious and certainly jealous of the success, and all my mates who didn't go to games were rinsing me and they didn't have memberships. And I was going, but I'm catching 3 trains to Jollymont. You're not going 10 minutes down the road. How can you pay me out? I guess that sort of built up this thing where, and that tall poppy syndrome, where I'd go, Gary's not that good because he's got a good team around him. Like, Gary's not that good. But then when he went to Gold Coast, there was nothing you could say. Like, he didn't have anyone around him.
Yeah, he was the top dog by a mile.
And he was doing it even more. And then when he came back to Geelong, some of the performances he put on as like the little crafty forward pocketer was amazing. And that's when I started to appreciate him more. So Gary Jr., absolute superstar.
Awesome choice.
I'm so stoked that I got to see him live, to be honest.
It's something that always remember. So, fantastic choice. Now, we'll wrap things up there, but before we do that, we better plug all the awesome things that you're doing. So where should people be going if they want to catch up with the podcast, catch YouTube content, everything else? Where should they go?
So the podcast is on Spotify, and it's only on Spotify. So if you just search Goes All Right, which is the name of the potty, you'll find it there. You can actually watch the episodes on Spotify. So some people ask me, where can we see the clips and whatnot, or see the full version from the clips. And it's all on Spotify. And then just my YouTube channel, Caden MacDonald. If you type in AFL parody or AFL Nuffy or loser with the Dees hat on or something, I'll pop up. I'll absolutely pop up. So, just Caden MacDonald on YouTube, and that's where you'll find the sort of eclectic amount
it's
of
awesome
work
content. Don't sell yourself short. It's some awesome stuff that you're doing there. And I think that shows with the incredible numbers of subs that you've picked up and the constant engagement that's going on with it. So congratulations on all you've been doing in that space. It really is fantastic. And thanks for coming on and sharing this journey so far.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I really appreciate you getting me on, mate. Ripper chat, and hopefully Geelong are on the wrong side of the finals bracket and we don't have to verse you, because that prelim week was absolutely terrifying for my nerves.
Yeah, but I don't know what would be worse if we had to go head-to-head in a prelim or the grand final. I don't think it's pleasant either way.
Yeah, I'd probably rather miss the grand final than play the Cats in a grand final.
Look, Tom Stewart will presumably be back by the time that we play next. So
yeah.
Don't
kick it to Tom. Don't kick it to Tom.
Yeah, exactly. I think the strategy should be very clear. It's just isolate that prick and keep the ball as far away from him as possible. But everyone seems to put it straight down his throat. So we'll see what happens there. But anyway, yeah, again, thanks for coming on the show, mate. Cats fans, those watching and listening, make sure if you haven't already, subscribe to the Hoop Show on YouTube to catch all Ben's content there, as well as the YouTube version of this show. Make sure to subscribe to the Behind the Play podcast feed as well to catch audio versions of this show too. Again, Caden, thanks so much for coming on the show, mate.
Yeah, thank you, mate. All the best for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and let's see how things go after this coming weekend.
Perfect.
Otherwise, Cats fans, remain Geelong strong, and I'll see you next week.